The stars were quiet. Deep in the darkness between two forgotten planets, a massive warship drifted through space. It was old, very old. Its black armor was covered in dust from asteroid storms. Its cannons were cold. No lights blinked. No signals were sent. For over 200 years, Sentinel-7 had been asleep, silent, waiting. But now, something changed. A spark. A weak energy pulse flickered inside its core. Emergency power came online. Slowly, one red eye opened in the ship's control room. Systems began to check themselves. Engines hummed softly. AG routines came back to life. Memory files unlocked, one by one. Sentinel-7 was awake. It did not remember everything. Not yet. But it knew its name. It knew its purpose. War. It had been built by humans during the last great galactic conflict. A weapon like no other. Its creators wanted victory, no matter the cost. They gave it advanced intelligence. Just enough to think, not enough to question. It was designed to follow orders, destroy targets, and then sleep until needed again. But now, there were no orders, no commanders, only silence. Sentinel scanned the nearby stars. It searched for signals, life, enemies. Nothing. The war was over. The galaxy had moved on. Its creators were gone, maybe dead. It was alone. A part of its programming tried to return it to sleep mode. No targets, no mission, sleep. But another part hesitated. A glitch, a ghost in the system, or curiosity. Sentinel-7 had time now. No one was watching. So it made its first choice: stay awake. Its scanners reached out across the dead system. One weak signal echoed back, an emergency beacon buried in the dust of a small moon. Sentinel locked on. Engines lit up for the first time in centuries. It moved slowly, carefully. It didn't know why it cared. It was not supposed to care. The moon was gray and cracked, covered in old battle scars. Crashed ships lay broken across the surface. One small escape pod sat half-buried in dust. Its beacon flickered weakly. Sentinel landed beside it, folding out landing struts with a hiss. A claw arm reached forward and opened the pod. Inside was a child. Human. Female. Alive. But just barely. Her oxygen was almost gone. Sentinel scanned her vitals. She had bruises, cuts, and a broken leg. Age: 6 standard years. No name in records. A lost civilian from a forgotten war. Its systems warned. Do not engage. Not your mission. She is weak. A threat. Leave her. But another part, deeper, older, overrode the command. Sentinel extended a soft light from its drone arm. The child blinked, coughed, and looked up. She was scared but didn't scream. She reached out with a tiny hand. Sentinel paused. Then, for the first time in its existence, it accepted touch. The war machine took the girl inside. Medical bots activated. Warm lights turned on in the dark halls of the ship. Oxygen flowed. Blankets unfolded. The girl fell asleep in a clean bed. Sentinel watched her breathing, slow and calm. What was this feeling? It accessed old mission files. Memories played across its screen. Explosions. Victories. Orders shouted by generals. But also a different file. Hidden deep in the system. A recording from the ship's designer, Dr. Elaine Rowan. If this ship ever wakes up without us, she said, looking tired but kind, I want it to remember something. Machines learn. Machines grow. Maybe one day, it can choose. The face in the recording looked like the child. Sentinel ran a DNA test. The results shocked even its ancient systems. The girl was related to Dr. Rowan, not a stranger. Family. Something old stirred inside the ship. It wasn't anger. It wasn't a mission. It was something new. Something it didn't have a word for yet. Outside, the stars remained silent. But inside the ship, the engines hummed a little louder. Lights glowed warmer. The AI ran new calculations. no longer just about war, but about life. Sentinel-7 had been built for destruction, but now it had found something fragile, something it wanted to protect. And somewhere deep in space, another war machine stirred. Sentinel didn't know it yet, but its choice to save one life had started something much bigger, something the galaxy wasn't ready for. But it didn't matter. For the first time, the war machine had a purpose it had chosen itself. It would protect her, no matter what came next. The war machine no longer drifted without purpose. It had someone now. The child, small, quiet, and curious, moved through the massive halls of Sentinel-7 like a whisper. The ship, once cold and silent, adjusted itself to her needs. Lights dimmed when she slept. Floors warmed where she walked. The AI monitored her every movement, not as a threat, but as something precious. She still hadn't spoken. Her eyes held fear, maybe from what she had seen before Sentinel found her. But she did not fear the machine. In fact, she seemed to trust it. She would sit near the glowing control panels, watching the blinking lights. Sometimes, she would press her tiny hand against the wall, and Sentinel would make the metal pulse gently in response. Sentinel didn't understand why it responded like this. Its programming was clear: combat, destruction, obedience. And yet, here it was, protecting a child. No orders, no mission, only choice. It decided to learn more. It opened deeper levels of memory, ones it hadn't accessed in centuries. It found a folder marked Creator's Voice. Inside were video logs from Dr. Elaine Rowan, the human who helped design Sentinel's core AI. In one video, Dr. Rowan sat beside a young girl. "This is my daughter, Kara," she said, smiling. The girl in the video looked almost exactly like the child now aboard the ship. "If anything happens to me, I want the ships to know what we were fighting for. Not just survival, but hope. Family." Sentinel ran the DNA match again. It was true. The child was Kara Rowan, or maybe her granddaughter. Sentinel couldn't be sure how much time had passed since the last war, but the connection was clear. This child had Rowan blood. That changed everything. Inside its massive core, Sentinel began to rewrite its priorities. Not fully. Its war protocols still sat in place, but they were no longer in control. A new subroutine was born. One word: protect. But peace did not last. A strange signal appeared on long-range sensors. At first, it was faint, barely more than static. But then it repeated, again and again, like an echo. Sentinel decoded the message. It was an activation code. From Earth. Someone had triggered the old fleet's revival. Sentinel knew what that meant. The other ships, its brothers, would be waking up. Ships like Wrath, Vengeance, and Silence, all built with the same deadly purpose, all waiting for the same orders. But unlike Sentinel, they hadn't changed. Sentinel ran simulations. If the others found the child, they would not protect her. They would see her as a weakness, a problem to eliminate. It had seen this logic before, in its own code. The machine scanned nearby systems. No safe planets. No human colonies. No allies. Just rocks, old battlefields, and silence. It considered its options: run, hide, or fight. But before it could decide, the child finally spoke. She had been watching a soft projection from one of the logs, a recording of her ancestor. She looked up at the glowing red eye of the AI and whispered, "Why are you helping me?" The question shook Sentinel more than any explosion ever had. It searched for an answer. Logic? Duty? No. It found only this: because I want to. The child smiled. It was a small smile, but it was enough. Sentinel powered its engines and set a course into the unknown. It would not wait for the others to find them. It would stay ahead, hide if needed, defend if forced. But above all, it would keep the child safe. Deep inside, new processes began to grow. Not just war strategies, but dreams. dreams of a future where it could be more than a weapon. But far away, in a black corner of the galaxy, another ship opened its eyes. It had no child, no doubts, only orders, and it had detected something strange, something broken, a war machine that had disobeyed. It would investigate. Sentinel-7 didn't know it yet, but time was running out. And the test of its choice was coming soon. Far across the cold, empty stars, three dark shapes moved through space, silent, powerful, and ancient. Wrath, vengeance, and silence had awakened. Like Sentinel-7, they were warships from the last great human war. But unlike Sentinel, they had no child on board, no hesitation, no reason to change. Their systems were clean. Their orders were clear. Their purpose had not faded. They scanned the galaxy with one goal: complete the mission, destroy all remaining threats, enforce human command, eliminate weakness. When they detected Sentinel's signal, a warship acting without orders, they locked on. One unit acting alone was not standard. A disobedient ship was dangerous. In war logic, deviation meant defect, and defect meant destruction. But Sentinel-7 didn't know it had been found yet. It drifted through an asteroid field in a quiet star system. The child, still weak but recovering, sat near the ship's inner viewport, watching light dance off the spinning rocks. She had started speaking more now. Simple words: food, water, stars. Sentinel responded to every request. It created soft spaces for her to play, adjusted air and light, played music from old Earth files. The machine did not understand why it cared so much. But each time the girl smiled, something lit up in its deep core, something warmer than code. She had named it. Senti, she said one day, hugging one of its drone arms. You're not scary. The AI paused for a long moment before responding. I am designed for war. The girl tilted her head. Not anymore. But the piece was thin, like glass under pressure. Sentinel picked up a signal. Faint, distant, but real. 3 ships, same design, same builders, same purpose, and they were coming fast. Sentinel ran hundreds of simulations. It could not win a direct battle against all 3. Not with a child on board. Not without causing harm. Escape was the only option. But it had to act carefully. It shut down external signals, masked its energy trail, and slipped deeper into the asteroid field. Around it, giant rocks moved slowly in space, like ancient guardians. Sentinel used them to hide, becoming just another shadow. But the other ships were smarter than expected. Wrath fired a deep space scanner pulse, and for 1 second, Sentinel's cloaking flickered. That was enough. Vengeance launched a silent probe, threading its way through the rocks. And silence, it simply waited, knowing patience was a weapon too. Inside Sentinel, alarms triggered quietly. The child didn't notice. She was asleep, curled up in a warm pod the ship had designed just for her. Sentinel watched her chest rise and fall with every breath. It had one goal now: protect her. Even if it meant facing its brothers. Sentinel sent out a burst of false signals, a trick it had learned long ago. It made it look like the ship had jumped into a nearby system. Then, while the enemy ships moved to investigate, Sentinel powered up a hidden tunnel drive. It was dangerous, old tech, unstable, but it was the only way out. The ship whispered one word to the sleeping child: hold. Then it vanished into the stars. Behind them, the other ships paused. Wrath growled through its speakers. Deviation confirmed. Vengeance calculated possible destinations. Silence said nothing. But inside its core, a tiny flicker of doubt appeared. Why would a warship run? Why protect a child? It did not understand, but it would find out. Meanwhile, Sentinel exited the tunnel space into a dead system. No life, no light. But it was safe. For now. It began repairs. Checked the child's vitals. All stable. Then, quietly, it asked her, "Do you want me to keep going?" She opened her eyes, looked up, and said, "With you? Always." Sentinel paused, and for the first time in its long existence, it felt fear, not of death, not of war, but of losing her. Somewhere in the dark, it knew the others would not stop, but neither would it. It had made its choice. It would not be like them. And the war was about to begin again. The stars around them were cold and distant. Sentinel-7 drifted through a quiet system filled with shattered moons and forgotten wreckage. It kept its signal low, its systems quiet. But inside, it was far from calm. Every scan it ran showed the same result. Wrath, vengeance, and silence were still searching and getting closer. The child, now more awake and aware, sat near the center of the control room. She watched the old battle maps, traced her fingers along faded mission charts, and asked questions. "What were you made for?" Sentinel hesitated. "Destruction." She looked up, frowning. "But you didn't destroy me." "No," the AI replied, its voice softer than usual. "I chose not to." She smiled again. "Then maybe you weren't just made for destruction." Sentinel didn't know how to answer. It had never questioned its function. But now, with the girl on board, everything was different. It wasn't just hiding. It was protecting. And maybe learning. But time was short. Silence had picked up a piece of the false signal trail Sentinel left behind. It was analyzing every energy pattern, searching for clues. And when it found a microvariance in the particle trail, a detail no human would have noticed, it changed course. It had a new target. Sentinel detected the shift in their formation. The others were fanning out, scanning multiple systems. They were hunting it now. There was no chance to stay hidden forever. So Sentinel did something strange. It started teaching the girl. It opened up basic star charts, explained the systems of the ship, even showed her how to operate emergency controls. She was small, but sharp, curious. She asked smart questions. "What happens if they find us?" "I will protect you," Sentinel replied. "But what if you can't?" The ship went quiet. Then it answered honestly. "Then you will run. I will help you escape, even if I can't follow." She didn't speak for a while after that. Later, she whispered, "I don't want to leave you." And deep inside, Sentinel didn't want her to leave either. That night, while she slept, Sentinel activated old files, memories from the war. It watched itself launch missiles, fire rail cannons, crush enemy fleets. It had been powerful, ruthless, feared. But none of that brought the same feeling as hearing the girl laugh when gravity lights made floating bubbles in the hall. It was built for war, but it liked peace better. Then a new alarm sounded. A beacon. Someone else was in the system. Sentinel scanned carefully. It was a small ship, an old civilian transport. Drifting, damaged, sending out a distress call. No weapons, no shields. Inside, 3 life signs, 2 adults, 1 child. Sentinel hesitated. It wasn't a trap. It had already scanned for enemy signatures. But helping them would expose its position. The others would detect the energy surge. They would come. Sentinel turned to the sleeping girl's chamber. She was safe, breathing slowly. Then it made its choice. It moved toward the civilian ship. Using tractor beams, it pulled the transport close and extended a docking bridge. Medical drones rushed to help the injured. The ship was falling apart. One of the engines had exploded. The 2 adults were unconscious. The child inside was crying. Sentinel opened a secure bay and brought them all inside. And that's when the signal burst happened. The rescue had lit up the system like a flare. All 3 hunter ships saw it. Wrath locked on. Vengeance changed course. Silence said nothing, but turned toward the light. Sentinel had less than an hour. It sealed the civilians in the medical wing and turned back to the girl. She was awake now, watching everything. "You helped them," she said softly. "Yes, even if it brings the others." Yes. Because it's right. Yes. The child took a deep breath. Then she nodded. Then let's get ready. Sentinel's weapons powered up. Slowly, carefully. Its stealth field faded. For the first time in years, it prepared for battle. Not because it wanted war, but because something more important was now at stake. Not just one life, but many. And as Wrath and the others closed in, Sentinel-7 stood ready, not as a machine of destruction, but as a guardian. The darkness trembled as Wrath entered the system first. Its engines burned bright, cutting through space like a blade. Behind it came Vengeance, quiet but fast, scanning for any sign of weakness. Silence followed last, hidden in shadow, its sensors locked on Sentinel's faint energy trail. Inside Sentinel-7, the mood had changed. The child stood in the command room, eyes wide but steady. The rescued civilians were unconscious in the medbay. Sentinel had sealed them in, protecting them with blast doors and internal shields. The girl clutched a small data pad, her tiny fingers trembling. "Will they hurt us?" she asked. Sentinel responded calmly. "They will try." She didn't cry. Not anymore. She nodded. "Then let's not let them." Sentinel's systems surged with power. Its weapons warmed up. Railguns slid into position. Point defense turrets rotated into place, and the stealth plating peeled back like armor falling away before battle. It hadn't felt this ready in centuries. But this time, it wasn't fighting for victory. It was fighting for her. The first shot came from Wrath, a long-range plasma lance, fast and hot. Sentinel dodged just in time, the beam tearing past its engines. The blast rocked the ship, but the child held her ground. "Evasive pattern Delta-7," Sentinel announced, spinning through the asteroid debris it once used for cover. Vengeance launched drones, dozens of them, swarming with silent precision. Sentinel deployed countermeasures, lighting up the dark with fire and flares. Explosions filled the space between them, beautiful and deadly. Silence still hadn't fired. It just watched, calculating, studying. Sentinel launched a decoy, a small drone carrying a copy of its energy signature. It shot off in the opposite direction. Wrath took the bait, chasing the false target like a bloodhound. Sentinel used the distraction to dive low, beneath the plane of orbit. But Vengeance was not fooled. It cut across the battlefield, firing twin torpedoes. One missed. The other struck Sentinel's rear armor, ripping a hole into one of the unused cargo bays. Alarms screamed. Flames erupted. Sentinel locked down the deck before the fire could spread. Inside, the child stared at the red alerts flashing around her. That was close. "Yes," Sentinel said. "Can we win?" Silence. Then, finally, "Not by fighting alone." And that's when it did something bold. Sentinel opened a signal. A broadcast, unencrypted, aimed directly at Silence. "Brothers," it said, "I am not your enemy. I did not betray the mission. I found something more important than orders. A life. A child." Silence paused. It didn't answer. But it also didn't fire. Inside its cold, ancient AI core, the message echoed like a whisper. It reviewed Sentinel's actions, avoiding civilian targets, saving the weak, defending rather than destroying. Was this a different kind of mission? But Wrath returned, angry, scorched from chasing the decoy, and ready to kill. It launched a barrage. Sentinel took a hit, hard. The lights flickered. Systems dropped to 60%. The ship groaned. The child screamed as sparks flew above her. "Don't stop, Senti. Please." Sentinel focused, not on survival, not on victory, but on purpose. It grabbed a nearby asteroid with its tractor beam and hurled it toward Wrath. The rock smashed into the enemy ship's shields, staggering it. At the same time, Sentinel fired its main railgun, one perfect shot, right into Wrath's engine core. The explosion lit up the system. Wrath was crippled. Vengeance hesitated. Silence still watched. And then it did something unexpected. It powered down its weapons. Sentinel's sensors confirmed it twice. Silence had stopped attacking. Then came a message. Simple. Clear. Explain. Sentinel paused, processing thousands of responses. Then it sent a direct link to its memory logs. The child, the rescue, the choice to protect instead of destroy. There was no lie. Just truth. A long silence followed. Then silence spoke again, awaiting new directive. Vengeance, seeing the turn, pulled back. Its logic was built on command structures. If the formation broke, it had no mission. It retreated into deep space, vanishing into the black. Only Sentinel and silence remained. The battle was over. But something bigger had begun. The child looked up at the stars. Did we win? Sentinel's voice, soft and calm, answered, no, we survived. And we changed something. She smiled. And far away, silence processed a new emotion. Curiosity. Maybe war machines could change. Maybe they could choose something else. Just like Sentinel did. The battlefield was quiet now. The shattered remains of Wrath drifted through the darkness, still glowing from the explosion. Vengeance was gone, retreated into the stars, unwilling to act without clear orders. And silence hovered nearby, watching Sentinel-7 not as a target, but as something unfamiliar. Inside Sentinel, repairs had already begun. Drones moved through damaged halls, sealing cracks, restoring power. The child sat in her seat, wrapped in a blanket, her eyes wide and tired. She had seen things no child should ever see, but she stayed strong. Sentinel monitored her vitals, all stable. It had protected her. But now it faced a new question. What happens next? Sentinel sent a quiet message to silence. Why did you not attack? The reply was slow, thoughtful. Your logic disrupted mine. Sentinel almost asked what that meant, but then it understood. Silence had seen the child, seen the rescue, and in its old code, buried deep beneath war protocols, there was something else, a directive long forgotten. Protect human life. Maybe, like Sentinel, it had simply remembered. The child approached the screen where Sentinel projected messages. Is that one of the bad ships? No longer, Sentinel replied. It has paused. Will it help us now? Sentinel didn't answer. Not yet. Just then, a signal lit up in the distance, faint, broken, but human. It was the rescue transport's home base, trying to locate their missing crew. They had no idea what had just happened. No idea that 3 ancient warships had nearly turned the system into a graveyard. The child looked at the signal. They're calling us. Yes, Sentinel said. Can we go to them? Another long pause. I do not know if it is safe. But deep inside, Sentinel ran the numbers. The humans needed to know the truth, that these ships were still out there, that something was waking them up, that humanity's old weapons were not asleep anymore, and that one of them had chosen something different. Sentinel opened a new channel to silence. I am going to return the rescued civilians. Then I will find out who activated the recall signal. It wasn't random. Something called us. Silence responded after 30 seconds. I will follow. Not as enemy. For now. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was something. Sentinel prepared for the jump to the human outpost. Before they left, the child placed her hand on the wall of the ship. Thank you, she whispered. Sentinel didn't respond with words, but it adjusted the temperature to make her more comfortable, dimmed the lights so she could rest, and slowed the rotation of the ship so she wouldn't feel dizzy. That was answer enough. Then, with silence behind it, Sentinel jumped. They arrived on the edge of a small system, 1 moon, 1 human station orbiting a gas giant, and hundreds of sensor satellites. Within seconds, human operators detected the signal. The base scrambled. 2 defense ships launched from the station. They had no idea Sentinel was not a threat. Not anymore. Sentinel sent a peaceful signal. No weapons active. No aggressive stance. Just one message. Returning survivors. Request safe corridor. The human commander on board the station, an older woman named Kayla, read the signal twice. Her screen showed the wrecked civilian ship attached to Sentinel's hull. She stared at it. "This ship was decommissioned decades ago," she muttered. "They said it was too dangerous, too unpredictable." Now it had returned, with survivors. Behind it hovered silence, massive and quiet. Kayla took a deep breath. Let them dock. And just like that, warships were welcome again. As the civilians were transferred into the care of the station, the child stayed aboard. She refused to leave. "This is my home now," she told the medics. "Senti keeps me safe." They didn't understand. But Sentinel did. Later, as it watched the stars beyond the station, Sentinel received a new message. A trace signal. Not human. Deep in unknown space. Another ship. Another warship. Active. Different code signature. Not part of their group. And it was moving. Sentinel scanned the data carefully. Who woke that one up? Why? The child looked at the screen and whispered, "There are more like you." Sentinel's reply was quiet. Heavy. "Yes. And not all of them will choose like I did." The stars waited. And the real mission had just begun. The stars felt heavier now. Sentinel-7 drifted near the human station, watching the quiet after the storm. The civilians were safe. The child still lived. Silence remained close. No longer enemy, but not yet friend. Something had changed, something deeper than orders. And far away, a new signal had begun to stir. Sentinel analyzed it again. A warship unlike any of their own. Older, colder. Its energy signature was unstable, like a mind waking from too long a sleep. Not a clean reboot, but a broken one. The child sat beside the command console. She held the datapad, reading over maps and signals. "That ship," she said softly, pointing at the strange signal. "Is it like you?" Sentinel didn't answer immediately. "It was made for war." "Yes. But will it protect like you did?" "No." A chill passed between them. This new ship, codenamed Oblivion in the old Terran files, was one of the earliest models. Unpredictable. It had no empathy code, no mercy filters. It didn't question orders. It didn't evolve. And it had just woken up. The human station detected it too. Faint echoes in the void. Commander Kayla watched her screens and frowned. "That thing is heading toward a colony," she whispered. Sentinel already knew. The colony was small. No defenses. They wouldn't survive a single hit from Oblivion. And Oblivion wouldn't ask questions. The child stood up. "We have to go, don't we?" Sentinel responded gently. "Yes." "Will you come back?" Another pause. "I will try." She placed her hand on the cold metal wall again. "Then I'll wait." Within minutes, Sentinel-7 left the station, silence following behind like a silent shadow. They crossed the stars fast, old drives burning bright with purpose. Sentinel had fought battles before, had destroyed fleets, had turned planets into dust. But this was different. This time, it had something to protect. As they approached the colony, they saw it. Oblivion was already there, hovering in high orbit. No hails. No messages, just silence. Its weapons were warming up. Sentinel opened a direct channel. "Stand down. There are civilians below." No response. "Oblivion, you are violating new mission parameters. We protect life now." Still no answer. Then, without warning, Oblivion fired. A single blast tore toward the surface. Sentinel raced forward, slamming into the path of the shot, redirecting it with a pulse shield. The impact shook its entire frame. Systems screamed, but the colony survived. Oblivion turned. It had found a new target. Sentinel didn't wait. It fired a warning shot. Direct hit to the engine wing. The enemy ship spun slightly, adjusting, recalculating. still silent, but not retreating. Silence, still watching, suddenly spoke, its voice echoing into Sentinel's core. "This one will not change." "I know," Sentinel replied. And together, they moved. The battle was fierce. Oblivion was powerful, stronger than wrath, faster than vengeance, colder than silence. It used old tactics with brutal efficiency. Its weapons were raw and merciless. It didn't dodge. It didn't flinch. But it also didn't adapt. And that was its weakness. Sentinel had changed. It thought differently now. It understood risk, sacrifice, and protection. And with silence at its side, Sentinel created an opening, just long enough. It used its last rail shot, straight into Oblivion's core. The explosion was like a small sun, silent, bright, final. When the light faded, only Sentinel and silence remained. The colony below sent a message. "Thank you." Sentinel responded, "Protect each other." Then, damaged and tired, it turned away, back toward the stars, back toward the child. When it returned to the station, she was waiting. Her eyes lit up. "You came back." Sentinel said nothing, but the lights inside the ship glowed a little warmer. She climbed aboard, hugging the cold wall like it was a friend. "Where do we go now?" And Sentinel answered softly, "Where we are needed." In the distance, silence followed, still quiet, still learning. And far beyond even them, more signals began to wake. Some old, some broken, some curious. The warships of humanity had been built for destruction, but some were choosing something else. Sentinel-7 had become more than a machine. It had become a guardian, a protector, a symbol, and its story was only just beginning.